So hello everyone again. Welcome to today's Charging Smart webinar, an introduction to Charging Smart, how local governments can foster electric vehicle deployment. I'm Kelsey Dombrowski. I'm a program manager at the International City County Management Association, where we support local government professionals with programs and resources. And we're really excited to be a part of today's webinar. We want to start with just a little bit of housekeeping. All participants are on mute. The chat is open, but we ask that you use the Q&A tab on the bottom of your screen to send any questions in, and we'll have time to go over these questions at the end of the webinar. Closed captioning is enabled and available. So if you're interested in using this feature, you can select Show Caption from the control bar at the bottom of your screen. We do have an AI disclaimer, so Energy Ready does not accept any artificial intelligence note takers or bot participants. If we see those, they will be removed and they won't be able to rejoin. And then finally, all of the materials from today, so presentation slides, recording, and other resources will be shared with you in just a few days. We have a great slate of speakers today. They're going to introduce themselves, but I'll give you just a preview here. So we'll start with Ed Gilliland from the Interstate Renewable Energy Council, Mackenzie Love from the Great Plains Institute, Devin Felichicchia from the city of Missoula, Montana, and then Alana Irwin from the city of Boynton Beach, Florida. And then again, we'll end with Q&A after that. So we'll go ahead and get started with Ed. Take it away.
Thank you, Kelsey. And good afternoon. Thanks for joining. My name's Ed Gilliland. I'm Senior Director with the Interstate Renewable Energy Council, and I direct the Charging Smart program. Next slide. Next slide. Just real quickly, we are a nonprofit 501c3 with a mission to for clean energy and energy efficiency to support the people and the planet. We have three areas of focus: workforce development related to renewable energy. We have a regulatory engagement team that focuses on interconnection to the distribution grid. And we have local initiatives, which I'm part of, which houses the Charging Smart program. And we focus on supporting local governments in the adoption of clean energy. Next slide. So what is Charging Smart? We are a no-cost technical assistance and designation program that supports local governments in the facilitation of electric vehicles, growth in EVs, and especially in the deployment of EV charging. Good, next slide. We are part of the Energy Ready suite of programs, which includes not only Charging Smart, but Soul Smart. So many of you might be familiar with Soul Smart. It's been around longer than Charging Smart. And as you can see on the next slide, it is, we now have over 600 cities, counties, and regional organizations that have been designated through Soul Smart throughout the country. And so Charging Smart, in the next slide, will show that Charging Smart is a newer program. And so we don't have as many designations, but you can see we have a lot in this active TA, this real pipeline of cities and counties that are trying to pursuing Charging Smart designation. Next slide. So we don't do this alone. We have many terrific partners that we work with. Of course, you just heard from Kelsey at ICMA. You're going to next hear from Mackenzie of the Great Plains Institute. But you can see on the top two rows, we have lots of sort of nationally focused partners. And then on the second two rows, you're going to see the more state and regional partners, and they administer the program on our behalf at the state and regional level. And if you can see, the next slide sort of shows how, so sometimes where we have the state and regional organizations, then we will work through them to administer the Charging Smart program. And in places where we don't have those regional partners, then we work directly with the cities and counties ourselves through IRAC and other national partners. So we have a really strong team. And not only do we have these, the many of these nonprofit partners, but as you can see on the next slide, we have industry partners that have been instrumental in helping us determine what these cities and counties, what some of those best practices should be. And so we work a lot with industry to look at the regulatory environment and see that we have a good meeting of the minds between what the local government really needs and what industry needs to make the deployment of charging easier and for all parties involved. Next slide. So what are we talking about here? We have pretty much anything that a local government can do to support the growth of EVs and EV charging. We have tried to encapsulate in these 6 categories here that you see: planning, regulation, utility engagement, education incentives, shared mobility, and government operations. We have among those 6 categories about 150 different actions that a local government can take to support EVs and EV charging. And so each one of these categories has about 20 to 30 actions. I will say that the regulation category gets the most attention because that's traditionally been the biggest barrier to charging. So we have over 30 actions in regulation, and that gets a lot of our attention, but all 6 of these are very important. And we work through all 6 of these. So going into the next slide, you can see that it's a point-based system. City or county can work to achieve, say, a bronze, silver, and gold designation, and each one includes more actions, more efforts to get, and you get more points to be, say, a silver than a bronze designation. They set this up so that it really addresses all cities and counties. We want to, for those that are new into charging, maybe they haven't done a lot in this area, then we encourage them to try to achieve a bronze designation. It's not, it's a tailored to their skill set, to their capacity. If you feel like that you have got a lot of this figured out, you know what charging's about, what EVs are about, then try for a silver or gold designation to really hone your skills and become best of class. Next slide. So I'm going to talk about what does each one of these designations entail. I'm going to talk about bronze, but we can also include slides in the deck that will cover silver and gold. But just to give you a flavor for how this works, so you can see for bronze, it's a total of 80 points. And those points, some of them are going to come from required criteria. So just like in college, you had some required courses. Here we have some required criteria or actions. And so you can see the list there. It talks about some things related to zoning and regulation. Remember, I just mentioned that. And then we look down and you see that in the planning and education incentives, we also ask that a city generate some actions in those categories, but we don't specify which ones. And then finally, there's going to be 20 points that can be achieved through any action that's on the list that you are you would like to try to achieve. Next slide. So a lot of our real benefit to you is we're going to provide you with expert technical assistance. We're going to give you the guidelines, the pathway, how you can move forward and adopt the best practices and achieve designation. So we have the best practices have been vetted by many stakeholders. We continually work to improve them and ask for your feedback. We have all the information in the guidebooks and templates and model language. The program guide is the which houses the more comprehensive information, talks all about the program, all of the various actions, describes them in detail, and then even provides links to sources of information to help you work through those actions. So again, we're tailored to communities of all levels. If you're just starting out, or if you think you're really got been in this in charging for a while, we've got things for you to improve your best practices. Sometimes we have communities come to us and say, well, we've got A, B, C, and D all figured out, but we really haven't, we're really struggling with E. And so we really tailor our support to help you where you are and what you want to achieve. And even though it does take some time to go through the program and get designated, ultimately it's going to save time, leverage your capacity, leverage your funding so that you can efficiently work in this space to support the growth of electric vehicles and charging. It's going to amplify the impacts of the shrinking levels of federal and state funding, really remove these unnecessary barriers and make it attractive for private investment. So with less federal funding, we really are looking for more private investment, and we want to make it easy for them to come in your community and invest. Next slide. So after all of that, you get designated, and then we want to recognize your accomplishments. And so we work with you to send out press release and get the recognition that you deserve for going through and improving your practices to support EVs and EV charging. Next. Okay, so here's contact, some information you can get for the program guide, which is really comprehensive, and then the more summary information in the flyer. And then the next slide gives our contact information. So contact me or people on our staff. And now I'm going to turn it over to Mackenzie Love of Great Plains Institute.
Thanks, Ed, and thanks everybody for being here today. It's really, really heartening to see all of these folks online. My name is Mackenzie Love, and I'm a Senior Program Manager and Transportation Planner at the Great Plains Institute, or GPI. We're a nonprofit dedicated to decarbonization across all sectors, and within that large umbrella, my team focuses on supporting and empowering communities. We also aim to take lessons learned and best practices from engaging with those communities and make them scalable and replicable, which is why we're so proud, and it was such a great fit for us to be the lead partner on the Charging Smart program. So on the next two slides is a little bit more about GPI, but we can go through those quickly. I'm happy to talk about anybody with them offline anytime later. And after that, we'll get a little bit into the Charging Smart program. As you heard from Ed, this program builds on a large body of work and knowledge and experience derived from all those communities that have and are actively participating, the industry partners that stand side by side with us, and the program team comprised of the organizations you're seeing here today and a few others. We are really proud to be part of something so impactful and to be here to serve folks like you on this call today. And we've been engaged in it since its earliest stages. And in fact, we started building some of the foundations with IREC for this program back in 2017. So there's a lot to pull from there. And in that time, GPI has led several cohorts, mainly across the Midwest. And so I'd like to tell you a little bit more today about that mechanism for delivering all of the resources that we've compiled into Charging Smart to you and making sure everything feels accessible and just easy to use. On the next slide, I'll tell you a little bit about the cohort structure. We found it to be very successful, and it's one of several options for how you can participate in the program. Cohorts are typically comprised of a group of communities that have some common factor. Either it's the geographic location that they're in, the type of community that the participant is, or perhaps the level of designation that you're interested in pursuing. So for example, we found cohorts focused on getting that bronze level to be a really great way for communities to get started and have a network um, that they can pull from peers in. Um, it, the cohort structure gives each participant access to both individualized support, that's really important, it's always maintained, and through technical assistance providers like GPI. But it's paired with this group support that I mentioned earlier, and allows for sharing resources with peers. So in the one-on-one setting on the far right-hand side of your screen, we'll do things like have goal setting meetings with each participant right as they get started, have check-ins throughout their involvement in the program, and offer in-depth technical assistance when needed. So diving into those 150 criterias and helping you pick out the right ones for you and making sure you have the resources to support you in doing them. That's backed up with the cohort approach that's highlighted in the middle there. And that often includes monthly webinars. Perhaps there would be one on each of the categories, that actions that Ed mentioned earlier. And there's some other more specific topics as well. So everyone can join in as a group and ask question and answers of the team member and also each other, and kind of crowdsource ideas. We also have office hours for more informal conversation and peer networking opportunities, so that any participant in a cohort could have a call a friend button, if you will, to say, hey, what language worked with your local elected officials, or something of that nature. So that's kind of the structure. And on the next slide, we talk a little bit more about the resources that it unlocks. Again, we have those one-on-one meetings and peer learning opportunities. But there's also access to a huge library of resources that Ed alluded to earlier. I kind of think of your cohort providers as the librarians that help you walk through this wonderful repository of information, which includes templates and guides. And I'll give you a little bit more of what you can expect there in just a moment. But the final piece of the cohort resources is really the goal setting and the roadmap to designations, which is really useful because it can, starting something uh, as large as electrification can feel daunting. So having a pathway of kind of tried and true steps to follow that can be tailored to your context can be a really nice way to get started and make meaningful progress quickly. So on the next slide, I'll talk a little bit more, as promised, about those resources and what they could look like. I know Ed alluded to the program guide that describes everything in depth. It links to things like guides for a specific topic that are really in depth. We're talking maybe 15, 20 pages of information in case you really want to drill down into a specific area of electrification. And then we also have templates, which are shorter form, maybe 1 to 5 pages, and they often present you an opportunity to kind of fill in the blanks, if you will. Take this resource that is a trusted structure and make it your own. For one place where this comes up is creating a page on your website about electrification, for example. Those tangible resources are often presented in the webinars, and they are always recorded and posted to YouTube playlists. And we bring in speakers that are a mix of our own staff, subject matter experts, and also examples from peer communities, even from sometimes preceding cohorts, so folks can see in the real world what each of the actions in the Charging Smart program looks like. On the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about the cohorts that we've already run. GPI has worked with several different groups across the Midwest, which included communities from Minnesota, Michigan, Ohio, Wisconsin, and Indiana. And we're really proud to have 11 of those become the first in the nation to earn Charging Smart designations. And we'll be launching another cohort of communities that span the Midwest in the early summer. I should also say there are other Charging Smart technical assistance providers running other cohorts. So don't worry if you don't see your state listed here. Charging Smart still has something for you. On the next slide, I wanted to give you a little bit of an idea of what happens after someone community participates in a cohort. We found them to view the cohorts as kind of a springboard for continued work on electrification, and they've been successful in making progress above and beyond the program. For example, we worked with La Crescent, Minnesota in one of our cohorts, and they went on to later become the first small city in the country to earn a gold level designation. So it's been really exciting and inspiring to see their growth from getting started in that cohort setting. Similarly, we're working with three other communities right now that are trying to level up. So they've already earned a bronze designation and are either moving to silver or, in some really ambitious cases, straight to gold. So people really find the cohorts useful immediately and also as a foundation for moving forward. I think I have one more slide for you here, just talking about the technical assistance providers. I gave you an example of how GPI runs cohorts, but also mentioned that other TA providers, technical assistance providers, do that as well. If you are interested in Charging Smart, you can fill out the contact us form on the Charging Smart or Energy Ready websites, and you'll be matched with the partner that can help you best, be that based on where you are in your electrification journey or your geography or something else. We'll find the right person for you. We have a really strong network, as Ed and I have both said, and we look forward to helping you wherever you are and whatever you're doing in electrification. So the first step is being here today, and we're very happy to be with you. The final slide for me is just my contact information. Please reach out anytime. Thanks, everybody.
Hi, all. My name is Devin Filichikia, and I'm a transportation planner with the city of Missoula in Montana. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about our city's electrification journey and kind of our goals to support charging infrastructure in the community and how Charging Smart kind of played into that. So we can go to the next slide. I'm going to start with a little bit of a background. If you're not familiar with Missoula, and even if you are, I think it's helpful to start here. The first one I think is a little bit unsurprising, is that Montana has one of the lowest electric vehicle adoption rates in the nation. But Missoula County, compared to the rest of the state, has a good bit more EVs on the road. So in the county, there are a little over 1,300 electric vehicles on the road. And just to kind of put that into an easier to understand comparison, that's about one electric vehicle per 93 people. So certainly not an incredibly high adoption rate, but certainly ticking up there. This number of electric vehicle registrations is rapidly rising. In 2023, statewide EV registrations doubled, and since 2023, we continue to see similar trends. Not quite doubling, but certainly getting up there. And just thinking about kind of the charging landscape in our community, we currently have 20 public charger station locations within 10 miles of the city. And within the time that I gave this presentation last, in September, we were at 18. So it's slowly growing bit by bit. Um, Within that 10-mile radius, there's 20 chargers and 55 ports. And those ports are split pretty evenly between level 2 chargers and direct current fast chargers at 27 and 28, respectively. And also just comparing Missoula County to other places, we're finding some interesting trends. Like one, Missoula County has about 44 electric vehicles per direct current fast charging port, whereas Denver County, a place with a much higher EV adoption rate, has 172 EVs per direct current fast charging port. So when you compare Missoula to other communities with high EV adoption, we seem to be doing okay on the direct current fast charging rates, but lagging somewhat behind on level 2 charging. And obviously, I think at-home charging is a critical piece of that equation as well. Um, looking, or we can go back to that other slide. Looking a little bit more about what the average Missoulian's experience is. We have an average daily vehicle miles traveled of 15 miles per hour, miles miles. So I think this kind of highlights that the average Missoulian is really the perfect candidate for an electric vehicle. It's a pretty condensed city, and we're not seeing folks commute incredibly long distances, especially within the city. And um, one other piece I want to include here is that single occupancy vehicles are not our goal. We have a fare-free electric public transit as a community, and we're also prioritizing multimodal transportation. But we're also kind of approaching EV charging with this lens that it can support our other community goals. I think an incredible example is like co-locating electric vehicle charging and e-bike charging is something we're very interested in doing one day, and just kind of thinking about how this can support a little bit more than just vehicle charging. We can go to the next slide. So shifting away from the background, I want to talk a little bit about an electric vehicle plan. It's our electric vehicle infrastructure plan, and it began in the spring of 2024. And it was kind of our first effort to begin to really look at how we can support charging as a community. So it aimed to create strategies to address and support electric vehicle supply um, equipment adoption in the MPO planning area. So it's split into an existing condition section, which kind of serves as background information for the community. It's a helpful document because it hopes to answer all the questions folks may have about electric vehicles even before they ask them. And then the meat and potatoes is the strategies and next steps. This goes out for the next 5 years. And I think the timing was very convenient in that our strategies are largely informed by the Charging Smart program. So we really leaned on those best practices there while creating this plan. We can go to the next slide. The first piece was I met Ed at a Fourth Mobility conference. And at this point, I think the program was pretty new. I'm not sure if anyone had been certified or only a couple folks had at that point. Um, but we really leaned on the program to ensure our electric vehicle plan followed the best practices that existed. Um, there's a lot of moving pieces related to electric vehicle supply equipment, as you might guess. And we found that the Charging Smart scorecard and program really helped us miss or ensure that we're not missing a critical piece. Kind of moving through that scorecard was a key way to make sure that, our staff who are trying their best, but certainly not electric vehicle professionals, can forward policy that really relates to the outcomes we want to see. We can move to the next slide. So for the city, we initially decided to go for a bronze designation. And the reason for that is we had a code reform timeline that kind of kept getting pushed, and um, our code was initially going to be finalized by the summer of 2025, but it ended up getting adopted in the beginning of this year. And kind of the strategy we took was to first go with bronze and kind of see where we're at as a baseline, and then include some relevant updates in our code reform process. And now that we're finding this bronze to silver designation success is kind of helping us tell the story to the community about how our new unified development code is really benefiting folks and benefiting the community in terms of EV adoption and infrastructure. So we're able to point to like how our code is a critical improvement. Another piece related to kind of our designation was that Montana's a unique state landscape. There's a lot of state preemption restricting things like electric vehicle ready ordinances. Um, and even though like something like an EV ready ordinance is considered a best practice in the Charging Smart program, they're able to work with us to change some of the requirements and we could get points somewhere else, even if we weren't able to do something like adopt an EV ready ordinance. Um, and I think another piece that we found really supportive is how the program looks at innovation. It's not like a cookie cutter approach, But if you do have kind of innovative pieces that are new and interesting and not included, you can kind of petition to get points for those. So, for example, one piece we were interested in piloting was in a cross sidewalk charging program or a right-of-way use permit. So you could do like what this person in the photo is doing and standing across a ADA compliant cord covered EV charging cord. And this would support folks without access to a garage or driveway. And excitingly, in I think either tomorrow on the 22nd or on the 23rd, our new municipal code will go into effect, which will be the start of this right-of-way permit pilot program. And we're hoping to get points for that in our Charging Smart designation. So even though it's not included, there's a lot of flexibility there that we're finding quite helpful. We can go to the next slide. So this Charging Smart program initially informed our electric vehicle plan, like I mentioned. But I also think it's important to share that it continues to inform our work related to electric vehicles. It didn't stop at that plan. Charging Smart provided real world examples that we could model that I think were really helpful. And when we're working to update our new code, I really think we would have been lost without their examples. We knew that we could kind of follow these clear recommendations and that they would align with best practice. As we build our website, for example, the scorecard served as a checklist of key pieces. Personally, I think trying to distill like this giant electric vehicle infrastructure plan into a simple website was really daunting. But I think the scorecard helped us kind of pull out what were some of the critical things to include and how to make those accessible on an online platform for the public. And I also think that the program serves as a good roadmap of how we can improve. I really appreciate that. It feels like we've done a lot, but the Charging Smart program still kind of has that gold designation that we're beginning to look forward to, and see how we can improve and provide a little bit better of a charging experience for the community. Can go to the next slide. And the last piece I want to touch on here is the transferability and how I think that's really one of the best parts of this program. So our story is a little unique. I think the program came to us at an ideal time, right? When we were beginning this pretty robust electric vehicle infrastructure planning process. But I also want to highlight that like no matter where your community is in electric vehicle planning, like if you're brand new to it or if you've been doing this work for decades, I still think the program would be very useful. I think the program's useful as a standalone tool. The program itself can kind of serve as your EV infrastructure plan if your community doesn't have capacity or time to create such a plan. And I also think that our EV infrastructure plan is a much more valuable tool because of Charging Smart. I think about when I started drafting the plan, I conducted a literature review of 42 other community plans, and then I tried to distill the best parts of those plans to inform our draft. And funny enough, I found that the Charging Smart program, was far more helpful and comprehensive than this literature review. And it saved me a lot of time and it helped ensure that we didn't draft a subpar plan that would just kind of sit on the shelf and not follow best practices and not get used by the community. You can go to the last slide. And then here's my contact information if you would like it. I'm glad to answer any questions if it's more convenient to follow up after this webinar. But there's also that QR code in the top left. You can scan it just in case you're curious about looking into our city's EV page or reading a little bit into our infrastructure plan. And with that, I think I'll pass it to Alana.
Thanks, Evan. Good afternoon and good morning to those of you on the West Coast. My name is Alana Irwin. I'm the Sustainability and Resiliency Administrator for the city of Boynton Beach, Florida. We are a coastal community located in southeast Palm Beach County, geographically right in between the cities of Boca Raton and West Palm Beach. You may be familiar with those. And today I'm going to talk about our journey to bronze. Next slide, please. So as you've kind of heard throughout this presentation, Charging Smart, it helps municipalities set impactful and achievable EV charging and EV infrastructure, as well as EV readiness goals through their technical assistance and support programs. In the state of Florida, we actually don't have a regional technical service provider, so we've been working directly with IRIC on our Charging Smart journey. Prior to Charging Smart existing and rolling out, we had done some work here in the city of Boynton Beach, but it was really just kind of all over the map as far as how we were adopting things, what types of policies we were putting into place. And Charging Smart has really helped us be able to streamline that. I'll talk about our journey and that piece a little later. Our initiatives in the past had focused a lot on procedural improvements, infrastructure evaluation, and long-term deployment. In recent years, we've been really trying to figure out how we're going to actually get EV charging to be more accessible to our community members and ways that we could do that. We're also the first city in Florida to opt in the program. I believe we're the first city in Florida to get bronze. So it's really exciting for us to be able to help kind of mold this journey with IRIC as they expand into the Southeast, and especially in states like Florida, where there are a lot of preemptions on EV readiness. And also, we are a participant in the Soul Smart program. We actually received Soul Smart Gold designation. So it really just made sense for us to opt into this program with Charging Smart and try to streamline our processes. And I just included a quote from the program guide that really kind of speaks to how Charging Smart has affected us. Becoming Charging Smart designated means you are helping community members save money, and you're really just trying to protect your natural resources, bolster local resilience, and increase job opportunities in the energy sector. Next slide, please. So these are Boynton Beach's EV goals. We really want to roll out a comprehensive EV charging infrastructure just to make sure that we have widespread availability. We want to also develop some kind of fee schedule to help offset the operations and maintenance costs of that EV charging infrastructure in the community. Right now, we have free charging. It's very limited. I'm going to talk about that in the next slide. But we have free charging right now, and it's really not easy for us to operate and maintain. We don't own the charger. So trying to get a system that makes sense for our community is really on the forefront of our goals. We also are looking at ways to expand opportunities for residents to install EV chargers in their homes. We currently have a program called the Energy Edge Rebate Program that provides rebates to residents that participate in energy efficient upgrades like solar panels, HVAC systems. And we also have a rebate for EV charging for residents to install them in their homes, but we currently, it doesn't even cover the cost of the inspection for the code compliance office to come out and do the final inspection on these permits for the EV charger. So we're looking at ways to make it a little more robust and accessible and worthwhile, which is indirectly going to be helpful when we're working with Charging Smart. And lastly, it's kind of at the lower part of the list because we don't really have an expansive fleet right now, but we would like to expand EV fleet where feasible. Next slide, please. So some of our challenges, as I talked about, we have a very limited number and type of EV charging ports. Most of our charging ports are level 2, with the exception of the Tesla supercharger station at one of our, I believe it's at like a Target Supercenter in the western part of the city. So we have 12 municipally operated ports. That's through our partnership with our Florida Power and Light Evolution program. And their level 2 chargers that were installed back in 2021. So the technology is kind of outdated now, and we've had a lot of hard difficulty trying to coordinate to get chargers repaired and things like that. So we have 54 total ports, which for a city that's about 16.5 square miles and in a state that has a high amount of EV vehicles in the state as far as the registration goes, it's an extreme challenge here. So we're trying to come up with a way that makes charging a little more accessible and available to our community. Internally, we've had some difficulties with coordination between departments to ensure that the policies that are maybe made by like our planning and zoning department are easily adoptable and accessible through the permitting process, and making sure that these chargers are available to residents to either use publicly or install in their homes. So that's a challenge that we've identified through this process, that showing that there maybe isn't as much coordination or consistency, or some of the policies that we have put in place are maybe outdated and not aligning with best practices that are part of the industry now. And then the main issue for us is having site data and the demand understanding. Because we don't control the chargers, we don't have the opportunity to look at the site level data and how much they're being used. And that's really a challenge for us to know how we should be implementing a charging infrastructure program, or what kind of expansion we would need. So these challenges have really kind of come to light as we've worked through our Charging Smart Bronze designation, and we're really grateful for the team at IREC to really help us move forward with this. Next slide, please. So the initial process, it's really not complicated. So what we did is we signed up through the IREC Charging Smart website to learn more. We received a brief presentation. It was about 30 to 40 minutes with some Q&A that we did then share with our city management team about the Charging Smart program. At that point, we would have to enter into a letter of commitment, which they provided us an example. We brought it to our commission to have our mayor sign it. We adopted it by resolution in February of 2025. And at that point, once we submitted the letter of commitment to the Charging Smart program, we then started our self-assessment. It wasn't a graded assessment or anything like that. It was more of a baseline to understand where you're at and where we could really develop a specific plan for the city of Boynton Beach as we move forward with the program. And this, as discussed previously with the other presenters, this can be done independently, or if you have a TA provider at the regional level that you are working with, you can work with that on them. Really, it was about 2.5 hours when all was said and done to do all of this work to get into the Charging Smart program. So it wasn't a heavy lift. You don't have to be an expert in EV charging to understand how to make this work. So it was really a seamless process. And you can go to the next slide. It's that simple. So I wanted to take a moment to talk about the scorecard. Devin had mentioned it previously in his presentation, and this scorecard really helped set the tone and the structure of how we tailored our Charging Smart program. It basically is a shared spreadsheet. You can go through and review all the required actions. You can review the optional actions and really find those really actionable items that you can use to make your program successful. You can even go through and use it as your guide. You can mark the actions as planned, in progress, or complete. They use this with the verification and the documents, and it may vary from how your TA provider uses it, but when I've worked directly with Ed and his team, we were able to just go into the shared documents in a Google Drive and just go through all of the requirements, whether they're optional or mandatory. It tracks through those categories that were discussed earlier: planning, regulation, utility engagement, education and incentives, government operations, and shared mobility. And it really made tracking what we needed to do, what we had already done, and what documents we maybe needed for verification. It really helped us get that support and streamline our process as we went through the bronze journey. Next slide, please. And as we developed our plan for bronze, these were some of the actions we had already completed. We had already developed a micromobility transportation assessment. We had adopted some goals and timelines for implementing micromobility and other transportation needs. We had discussions about mobility hubs, which is an action that you'll see in kind of some of the planning and regulation requirements as you go through Charging Smart, and really just trying not to promote some of the co-benefits of EV charging and EVs, and that was done through our Energy Edge rebate program. Next slide, please. So now that we had identified the actions that we had already done. We needed to find out the actions that we needed to get done. And there aren't, as Ed showed earlier, there were 80 required points that needed to be done. And we had done about, I would say about 85% of those. The main things that we needed to do was we needed to do this zoning review memo to just go through and do a deep dive of our EV regulation and our policies within our code of ordinances. And they gave us an example of a memo that had been done. We used that as a guide to determine if maybe it was less accessible, or if there were some limitations in language, if there were missing definitions or standards that we could then take to our planning and zoning team. And then if whenever the time comes for them to update the ordinances, they have that as a guide to make sure that they're incorporating these changes to make EV charging more accessible to our community. We also, and this was honestly the biggest lift for us, which really wasn't that bad after they had provided some examples, was we needed to develop an EV charger permitting website that had checklists. And out of this Charging Smart Bronze designation, we were able to build a website with the help of our permitting team to make sure that EV charging information was available. And we actually saw an uptick in residents receiving EV charging permits. And it was something that we were struggling with to make sure that they were actually compliant with whatever our requirements are. So that was a really positive result of this. The checklists were more accessible. They saw an uptick in pre-application meetings to make sure that all the required documents were needed for EV charging. So overall, it was a really great benefit from participating in this program. And then lastly, we had to engage with our electric utility to discuss their EV charging requirements or their programs, and if there were any collaborative opportunities, to which we are planning to further discussions now as we move forward with silver and potentially gold designation. Next slide, please. So how does Charging Smart fit into our EV infrastructure strategy? So what we're trying to do is we're trying to do a phased approach. Right now, we're in phase 1, where we're doing charging infrastructure assessments, trying to understand the types of chargers we may need, potential locations, how many we would need, maybe do a rate study. So we're trying to get an understanding of our overall layout of the city, what the demand may potentially be in the next 10 years and beyond. So we're really using the scorecard to help us build our assessments and ultimately our strategy. At that point, in the next year or two, we're going to hopefully have a public EV charging infrastructure rollout that will allow us to expand our infrastructure and accessibility to EV charging within the community. We're also probably going to combine phase 2 and phase 3. We need to do a policy review and update. A lot of the information that was identified in the policy memo was outdated, but at the same time, we still need to get some form of EV infrastructure and structure of how we're going to implement the plan into our communities. So we really can't do a policy update until we actually understand kind of what we need. So those 2 and 3 might go hand in hand. And then the last phase of this is to use the fleet portions of the scorecard to help do an in-depth assessment of our EV fleet rollout. That's more of potentially like an 8 to 10 year play, because we're just at this point where we've transitioned most of our vehicles to hybrid, and then we have about 8 years before those become considered end of life. So we're not really at this phase where we can do a full EV fleet rollout, and we really want to make sure that we're ready for that. So we've pushed that out to the furthest point. And what I really want you guys to take away from this is the Charging Smart program. They provide the necessary guidance and technical support to help streamline the implementation for your plans and for your projects. It's as everybody has said here, it is very flexible. It's adaptable to some of the changes in legislation or some of the preemptions that may exist in your state governments for EV infrastructure. So the team can always work with you on making sure that we can meet some of these designations and continue moving forward with the program. Because while the designation is important, it's really about getting the infrastructure available. It's about getting the EV fleets out there. That's really the most important component. But if you can get a designation, that doesn't hurt either. It helps give you a direction on what actions you have done, what actions you need to do, and how to develop actions that make sense and are you're not kind of spinning your wheels or wasting your time not getting the infrastructure or the assessments that you need. Charging Smart can help with that. And lastly, it helps build those strategic partnerships with your electric utility, with local nonprofits, with other national organizations to really just build those relationships and help EV charging become accessible to your community. Next slide, please. So what's next for us? So we've achieved our bronze designation. We're continuing to work with IRIC on the silver designation. Some of these things that we have to do is we have to further our utility engagement. We have to conduct an initial fleet analysis, which the type of fleet analysis we've actually done with the city of Boynton Beach isn't enough for verification. So our TA team has actually helped us get access to a website that we can use to help do that EV fleet and analysis for our community and help meet our silver designation accordingly. We have met most of our silver designation requirements points wise, but because we don't have these prerequisite requirements, we do have to finish those before we can go ahead and move forward with the silver designation. And we plan to evaluate some of the optional actions, mainly because we want to incorporate some of these into our overall long-term strategy and make sure the EV infrastructure is getting rolled out in a way that makes sense for our community. Next slide, please. So with that, there's my contact information. I'd be happy to speak to anybody offline after the call to talk about our journey through Charging Smart, and thank you for the time and opportunity to present today.
Great. Thank you so much to all of our speakers today. We will jump into Q&A. We have a good amount of questions and just a few minutes to go through them. So let's go ahead and get started. We have a few questions as it pertains to cohorts. So one of our questions is, if there isn't a cohort in my area, in my geographic area, I don't qualify for a cohort or I don't see one available to me, what are my other options? This might be a question for Ed, possibly Mackenzie.
Sure. So we do have a partner right now that has a cohort that is not geographically targeted. So that is very likely, if that's what your real interest is, we can talk with you and potentially get you involved in a cohort like that.
That's great. And kind of on the other side of that, we have a question from a staff member at a council of government. So a community serving organization that already has connections to a number of different communities. Are they able to sort of help host a cohort? It sounds like they've had a lot of success doing this when it comes to SoulSmart, Charging Smart's sister program. Are there partnerships, or could there be a partnership with a council of government or similar to reach their constituents?
Yeah, absolutely. And we have done that. We have, for an example, the North Central Texas Council of Governments had a cohort. Ran a cohort, and we have one with the Indian Nation Council of Governments is in Oklahoma running a cohort right now. So that is we're more than happy to work with various organizations to help them run a cohort. I don't know if Mackenzie, you want to add anything to that, or
I'll just add a little bit. We've also worked with a group in Ohio to run a cohort there. I think the question might have come out of Ohio, so I'd be happy to do some coordination behind the scenes there. And in the case of a COG or similar entity wanting to participate in running a cohort, I just want to offer that the program team like IREC and GPI could help the COG offer that technical assistance. So we'd be a backup to help navigate all of how the scorecards work and making sure everybody's designations are getting approved and everything. So you would have the team support from the program partners in addition. It wouldn't just be a kit, but also shoulder to shoulder assistance.
Yeah, and then we'll wrap up with a final cohort question, and we'll move on to a couple other topics. But um, it sounds like folks thought the GPI resources sounded really valuable. Is it possible to kind of consume resources like webinars from perhaps other cohort leads or TA providers if that's not a community's TA provider? Just maybe a broader question of how can we be sure we're accessing all those great resources?
I can take that one. Yes, when we're running a cohort, we try to keep the number of communities to a certain size for live participation to facilitate really nice discussions and things of that nature. But GPI, for example, records all of our cohort sessions and posts them on our YouTube account. And I know IREC has some webinars as well. So I will drop GPI's YouTube recording page in the chat, and hopefully we could share that out with folks. Um, and we have opportunities to sit in as well. So if you're interested in watching them, they're recorded. And if you're interested in joining the cohort after you see one, we'd be welcoming you in that way too.
That sounds perfect. And that's a great reminder. There are a lot of recordings through all of our great partners that you can access whenever you'd like. So in just the last couple of minutes here, we have some more kind of technically specific questions. So we have a question here wondering if this program is mostly designed to help provide level 1, 2, or 3 DC fast charge deployments, as they found that level 3 has a great deal of possible additional challenges. So is there any particular focus area for this program?
Just, I'm happy to answer that, but I don't know if Devin or Alana want to jump in here and comment on that.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So in my experience in the work that we've done with Charging Smart, it's pretty tailored to what your community wants to do. Like for us, we're kind of discovering through our EV charging assessment that level 3 might not be as feasible for us. So it's really more about getting the barriers removed. So if that barrier is about, getting any sort of charging into your community, you don't necessarily need to be specific to level 1, 2, or 3. So that's just kind of in my experience. It's not so much about the type of chargers themselves, but it's removing those barriers to make them more accessible for your community.
Yeah, but we want to help the community achieve the goals it needs to achieve to address its market and its demand.
Yeah, and I think this will probably be our last one here. So this gets into the criteria for the program itself. So just wondering a little bit about some of kind of the terminology that's used there. So the question is saying they're looking through the criteria and it mentions action items that they've already completed, but those actions are not documented in a comprehensive plan. And they're wondering if a climate action plan can count as a functional plan or count towards that point total since they have already completed those actions.
Absolutely. Yeah, we certainly, and I think, you heard Devin talk about their plan. It wasn't a comp plan. It was, I don't know, Devin, if you want to elaborate, but, it was a plan, a specific plan for their needs that they were working on.
Yeah, I don't have much additional to add, but yeah, we really kind of leveraged any of our documents that had the key information written down in them. So I think there's some places where I reference our climate action plan or other long-term plans, like our long-range transportation plan for the MPO. But yeah, I think I really kind of leaned on any place that our goals were very clearly outlined.
And I just want to add too that you don't have to rely on just one document for verification. It can be multiple documents if you have them in multiple different areas. The only recommendation I have is to make sure that when you're working on your scorecard and you include the verification document, put maybe which page or pages in the plan you're referencing, because sometimes it might be hard for the QA team that's doing the verification to confirm where it is. So just a thought there, but you don't need to have just specifically a comprehensive plan or an EV charging plan or anything like that. As long as you have a document that shows that you have EV charging goals, you have EV fleet goals, or you have something that shows you've done the work, you can go ahead and count that towards your verification.
Excellent. Great confirmation, Alana. And thank you all again for attending. And thanks so much to our panelists for presenting. This was a great webinar, a lot of great resources and experiences shared here. And this recording will be shared out with all of you in just a few days. So thank you so much.
Thank you.